Tonight on Nation to Nation, sobriety. For Randy Kakegamick, it's been 3 years without a drink. His motivation is simple: his son.
He knows what he wants. He has a voice, and I can hear him now. That I sobered up.
Kakegamick also hopes his story is inspiring.
If it helps one person, that's amazing, and if it doesn't, at least I'm helping myself, to try and better my next move.
Bruce Spence has been sober for decades, and there's no one path to being alcohol-free.
Whatever tribe you're from or whatever part of the country you're from, there is this reawakening of the spirituality, and I think it's taken a lot of business away from the breweries and the distilleries.
I'm Todd Lamoran, and welcome to Nation. With MP still a few weeks away from returning to Parliament Hill, we wanted to take the show in a slightly different direction. It's one we've been working on for a while, over a year in fact. Nation to Nation producer Kenneth Jackson has been following a First Nations man in Ottawa on his road to sobriety, from drumming at the AFN to speaking at schools to the streets of Ottawa. Randy Kakegamick has completely turned his life around. It's how he did it and why that we want to share with you. Randy's in studio with us today. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
But before we get into our discussion with him, Kenneth Jackson has prepared a story of the last year with Randy. It's called Stopping the Ripple.
Randy never saw himself here, making music and in college, but more importantly, sober.
It's a big deal for me, and it's really awesome. I finally started feeling proud of myself. It took a while because of, all the horrible things that I've done in my past, from drinking. I've been abusive with partners. I've been abusive to my parents mentally.
Getting here wasn't an easy journey. 3 years ago, Randy was in jail, a familiar place for most of his adult life. He got bail and went into the Lifehouse program at the Ottawa Mission. It helps adult men get sober.
Staying at the Mission, really, I'm surrounded by it. I was surrounded by it 24/7, I went out for a cigarette, there's somebody drunk right there, and
he succeeded what not everyone does. It was about finding confidence in himself for the first time.
And it came from going back to the drum. Going to sing and putting on my outfit for the first time, that afforded me so much confidence to talk to people, to go out to powwows, and
he also hit the beads, which slowed thoughts racing in his head saying, just have one drink.
But a lot of this helped at the beginning when I wasn't so busy in school. So I would gradually, do beadwork at night if I started thinking, about going out to try and trick myself into thinking I'd be all right on my own, going to a bar or maybe playing some pool, being in risky situations.
For years, Randy would embrace a bottle instead of his culture, and it led to arrest and jail time. No one knows that more than his mother, Frances, or how far he's come.
It's just best to live one day at a time, and that's how I see Randy doing it himself. He hurts from time to time, but he's a lot stronger than he ever was, and I'm really extremely proud of him and where he's at today.
Frances has come a long way too. She's a survivor of the Mohawk Indian Residential School.
What they did to me was they killed my spirit. They killed the child in me. Well, they practically murdered the child in me.
Her parents were also forced to attend schools.
We were there from September, the end of August till the end of June. Then we got sent back home. So when you get home, you don't know your parents. You don't know your mom and dad, but you know who they are. And as this went on for years, and as I got older, Like I was in there for 7 years. As I got older, it became extremely hard because there was no contact with your parents in terms of hugging and them letting you know how they feel about you, that they loved you. Like,
even up until her father died, he could never hug her. The intergenerational trauma of the residential school system is like a ripple across a pond. It inevitably reached Randy, who didn't attend a school, even if he didn't realize it growing up. He explained this last winter to a class of students in a social working program at the University of Ottawa.
And all this dawned on me not till, I'd say, 2.5 years ago. You know, I didn't know all of this until I tried to thoroughly think about the impact that residential school had on my people.
There's a story Randy tells about some of the neglect he faced as a child. The story begins here on these streets back when he was about 8. It was late at night and his mom was out, so he just took off wandering around Ottawa. A drunk man chased him into this alley, thinking his bag of white cookies was cocaine.
So yeah, this is the spot where that happened a long time ago, where I got the scar. I remember it vaguely, but at the same time it was forever instilled in my head, being attacked by a grown man, being a little boy. I woke up somewhere around here in a pool of blood, and I ran back.
He's not running anymore. He and his parents are in a good place. They have a common goal, this little boy.
You know, I don't see that same type of lost little boy that I was when I look at him, you know.
The vicious cycle of residential schools ends here.
I said, that's a good thing, you know. It's a good thing I don't see little Randy there. He's not lost. He's not, you know, he's got direction. He knows what he wants. He has a voice. And I can hear him now, you know, now that I sobered up.
Kenneth Jackson, Nation to Nation.
Well, we'll get your reaction to it after what you just saw, but we're going to take a quick break first, and then Randy tells us more about stopping the ripple. Welcome back. Before the break, we saw Randy Kakegamick's story, but there's only so much we can tell in about 6 minutes, and I know you've got a lot more to share, so we'll get into it. First off, what was it like to see that on television, your story there?
I think it was pretty cool. It's always nice to kind of reflect on some of the things I've been working on. It helps a lot. That's one thing I've learned about in treatment, you know, to constantly go over what I've been working on. It's a day-to-day process. I constantly, you know, have to remind myself who I am in terms of being an addict and an alcoholic. You know, I'm not better than anybody else. You know, I've done a lot of things, and it's just a reminder to humble myself from time to time. You know, and that totally struck a chord there again with that. So yeah.
Was it difficult to open up about your experiences, especially in such a public place as television?
Not totally. As I was going through, like I said, in treatment, that helped a lot to open me up. I took it seriously, so sharing some of those dark secrets was not as hard. The more you share them, you know, and I'm learning that. It's helped a lot with my confidence, that's for sure. That's the one thing that I've gained a lot more of, was being able to share with others. You know, in the program of AA, they always mention that you have to give back. That's what I'm trying to do. You know, I'm trying to, you know, help others if that's possible. You know, by sharing my story. You know, if it helps one person, that's amazing, and if it doesn't, you know, at least at least I'm helping myself, you know, to try and better my next move, basically.
Well, talking about bettering yourself in your next move, we saw a bit there that you're at Algonquin College, and you told me off camera you're going to be graduating soon. Tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing there.
Well, I did graduate from a program that was a part-time. So I was, you know, I'm an alumni now, which is pretty cool. And but I am in another program this year, and it's along the same lines with music production, and this one is music industry arts. It's an amazing program. There's a ton of work. I you know, just made it through my first semester with the help of, you know, faculty pushing me on, and you know, they seen that, you know, I'm trying to work hard. Going back to school at, you know, 42 years old is kind of, you know, kind of scary, but I managed to do it, and so I moved on to my second semester. Yeah.
I heard that you got the idea for music and music production while you were in a cabin in Thunder Bay. Is that true?
Yeah, it was what one of my counselors called a serendipitous moment, and I didn't really know what that meant, but at the same time, it was pretty cool because the cab driver had asked me what was my next move, and I totally didn't know. I was just trying.
Why did he ask you that in the first place?
Well, I had told him that I was in treatment.
Oh, I see.
And I was not walking. I was taking the cab from an appointment for a dental appointment, and he said, why are you taking this, you know, this cab? Where are you going? I said, I'm at the treatment center in Thunder Bay. And then he asked me, okay, well, what do you see yourself doing afterwards? And it just, you know, caught me off guard, put me in the corner kind of thing. And so I thought about it right there, and I told him, and he asked me what I was passionate about. And I said, you know, there's only one thing I've ever loved the most is music. You know, I still, you know, enjoy singing around the drum, and, you know, I'm not the best singer, but you know, I try. I still love it anyways, regardless. And so I thought of music, and then that's how it led me into that path, basically.
You've been sober for 3 years now. I suppose, do you have any message to anybody who's thinking of trying to get sober or have been sober?
Yeah, it's not an easy road for sure. You know, you have to want it. That's the main thing. Everybody has told me that in the past. People I've learned from, they always stress that, you know, it has to be you that makes the decision. You can't make a decision to do it for your partner, for your kids. You know, even though my son was a strong influence on my decision, he was not the total decision. You know, but you know, it was hard in the beginning to tell myself, you know, like, I need to do this or else I'm just going to end up staying behind bars for the rest of my life, and, you know, never achieving things that I've wanted to achieve. Yeah.
We saw your mother, of course, in the story. What kind of support has she given you, and where would you be without her, that support?
She's always been there for me, regardless of our past. You know, me and her, we've always didn't see eye to eye. You know, but she's always stressed that she'll be there for me no matter what, and she's not let me down there. That's for sure.
I suppose what's next? You said you're now an alumni of Algonquin College. What happens now?
They just sprung this idea again on me. One of the program managers. There's another program that I'm interested in possibly for next year, and that's film and movies and doing stuff behind camera. I kind of had an interest in it. I did take a few courses with it with my other project with the certificate I got in digital music production. So I'm possibly thinking about that right now.
So maybe getting a gig in television or working on films here in Canada?
Yeah, that would be you know, something else to think of. But right now my focus is on the music industry, and hopefully, you know, I would be able to do some work, editing, do some engineering, production. It's still down the road because we're only in our second semester, but I can see it actually happening now. Where I would have to put in the work. That's for sure.
Well, it's great you've turned your life around, and it was great to meet you and see your story. Thank you for doing this.
No problem. Have a good day.
Next, we speak to an APTN National news producer who stopped drinking in 1980. Welcome back. My next guest is a longtime producer at APTN National News. He also candidly describes himself as someone who has a drinking problem. That's despite not having a drink in 40 years. But Bruce Spence has also seen how substance abuse has devastated Indigenous people, both from a professional and personal perspective. He joins me now from Winnipeg. Welcome to Nation to Nation, Bruce.
Thanks, Todd. It's good to be here.
Why do you still describe yourself as somebody with a drinking problem?
Well, I used to drink quite heavily back in the day. I think the last time I went on a bender was actually in Ottawa in early 1980, and I blacked out after about 3 or 4 beers. So when that happened, I decided that I might have a problem and I should probably stop drinking. So because I've been looking at different ways of how to beat my problem with addiction, I thought that I probably shouldn't try this again. And what I've been told and what I've experienced and what I've seen with my own eyes is that if somebody that has the same problem that I do picks up another drink, you're still got the same problem, and you're still going to drink to excess. And I experimented with that myself one time. I went without a drink for 8 months, and then there was a hockey game on, and I just, for no apparent reason, I just went up to the bar at the old Winnipeg Arena and got myself 2 fists full of beer, and I was gone for a few more years after that. So
has it been difficult then since that time to abstain for all these years?
I became familiar with different groups of people with the same problem that I had, and I was able to learn a lot from them. And with the support that I got from the individuals in these groups and the groups themselves, I was able to maintain abstinence.
Personally, how has substance abuse affected you over the past decades, even though, as you mentioned, you haven't touched the stuff in decades?
There's no way to sugarcoat that. It's an issue that's affecting our communities big time. It's an issue that's affecting me, even though I don't partake. There are people around me who do, and it gets to a point, and in my case, it got to a point very, very early on in the evening, that the frivolity and the fun and the dancing and the laughing stops, and pretty soon bad feelings come up. There's fights. There's words said that wouldn't normally be said, and even though I'm not part of it, I feel it. I see it, and now you see it online. You see it on Facebook and places like that.
Of course, the idea of substance abuse has become kind of weaponized as a stereotype, the drunk and or lazy Indian, for example. Does that mean, because of this stereotype, that we're still not willing to really be open about it and talk about this?
I think a lot of the times we are not willing to talk about it, but I think just about with any other socioeconomic or spiritual issue, that the more you talk about these things, the closer you are to finding a solution. You talk about a stereotype of the drunken Indian, I know a lot of sober Indians. I know a lot of people who don't drink or do drugs, and you don't hear about them. But unfortunately, you see it on the street, you see it in the media, you see it in the police reports. And I would say that there's an entire industry that depends on this taboo concept of the drunken Indian. because it does exist, but it's not as far-reaching or pervasive as you would think, because it's not everybody. It's a few people, but it's not everybody. So I don't think it's not fair to say that the drunken Indian is there.
Of course.
There are some places, but not every place.
Yeah, of course, and that stereotype is still out there, but it is changing. What have you seen over the past 30 years?
Well, you know, I've seen a lot of individuals who are getting more in tune with their culture. You know, I've been told, and I don't argue with it. I don't question it that much. That because I can't stop drinking after one drink, or I can't stop having a toke after just one joint, that I have to stay high or I have to stay stoned all the time, that there's a part of me that's missing whatever it is that makes a person feel comfortable with themselves, or in other words, happy. So if I can't be happy unless I'm drunk or stoned, there's a problem there. So that's, to me, is a spiritual thing. So how do I fill that spiritual void? So I can talk to, I can go be part of a recovery group, or I can go to ceremonies. I remember the first time I went to a rain dance in the Pasqua Reserve in Saskatchewan in circa 1987, 88. I didn't even know what was going on, and I walked up to the lodge, and all of a sudden this great big guy comes running out, and he's got a hood on, and he jumps into the fire, and he starts kicking the coals around, and he's you know, he's got bare feet. And I thought that was a little bit amazing, so that kind of hooked me into the thing. But I learned more, you know, I learned more about going to sweat lodges, I learned more about pipe ceremonies, I learned more about the different ceremonies that there are throughout the year, and even the powwow. And so I think for our people, whatever tribe you're from or whatever part of the country you're from, there is this reawakening of the spirituality, and I think it's taken a lot of business away from the breweries and the distilleries.
Well, that's probably a good thing, to take business away from them. And I'm assuming that from what I've listened to you is that that's the answer then, is to be more in tune with your spirituality and culture rather than a treatment center in every community. Well,
you know, I've been through a particular center like that, and to me it's founded on spirituality. But I think it's worked for me. It might not work for somebody else, you know. So it's whatever. Try different things. You know, some people can just tough it out.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you, Bruce, for being on the show. Thank you.
All right, Todd. Thank you very much.
And that is our show. But if you missed it or a past episode, go to our podcast at aptn.ca/podcast. I'm Todd Lamoran. Thanks for watching.